Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 19. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the athletes, coaches, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank those of you who have liked, shared, commented, and subscribed to the show. Your continued support allows us to bring on more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. And I also want to thank our sponsors, Cerberus Strength, for bringing you this podcast today for free. Owned and operated by active lifters, Cerberus is trusted by the top strength sport athletes and lifters in the world. Cerberus's wide range of products are made by athletes for athletes, truly living up to its moniker, made by the strong for the strong. From sandbags, training gear, and supplements to lifting straps, knee sleeves, and more, Cerberus Strength provides the highest quality strength products on the market, designed and manufactured to help you defeat, destroy, and devour your competition. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to use our promo code STRENGTH_GAME at checkout to receive 10% off your next order at CerberusStrength.com. And with that said, I'm excited. In this week's episode, I'm joined by a friend of mine, Coach Philip Reuer. Philip is a high-intensity tactical training coordinator for the Marine Corps Community Services at Camp Courtney, Okinawa, Japan. In his current position, Reuer oversees the HITT training for the Marines at Camp Courtney. He has previously spent time as an assistant strength coach at American University, graduate assistant at South Dakota State, in addition to coaching internships at the University of Mary, the United States Olympic Committee in Colorado Springs, and the United States Air Force Academy. In addition to his coaching experience, Reuer is a former two-sport athlete at Valley City State University, where he played 2 seasons on the football team and 4 seasons on the track and field program. Currently, he's training and competing in Olympic weightlifting. Like I said, I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Philip Reuer. What's going on, everybody? I'm excited. I'm joined by my friend in a very far time zone away from me. That's why we got light and dark going on right now. Coach Philip Reuer. What's going on, man?
Doing well. How are you, Nick?
Doing well. It's a little later for me right now. I think you're mid-afternoon, but we're gonna get this thing rock and rolling.
Yep, it's 3 p.m. over here. The day in advance. So
yeah.
yeah. So I'll test out that day for you, and then I'll let you know how it goes. So
there you go. I appreciate that. Hey, so I want to hop right into it. I want to get right into kind of your background, what you really got started playing and training growing up. What really got you involved in the strength game and playing sports ultimately into like competing as an Olympic weightlifter?
Yeah, so I've always been involved with some type of sport. I actually grew up in a pretty rural area in South Dakota, and I grew up doing rodeo, and I used to do play basketball, baseball and football. I did all the sports. And when I got in high school, I more or less did just basketball, football, and track. And then after high school, I played college football, and I ran track. And to be honest, the only really reason why I was even on the football team is because I was fast. I had no skills. If you're a receiver, you need to be able to catch the football, so my actual playing time was special teams. That's what I actually got to do in football. But I was a skinny little kid that was faster than most people, and I got my way in that way. But so I've always been involved in sports, and I love the aspect of training. And I went to a pretty small school, Valley City State, which is NAIA. And at that time, they have a strength coach now, but at that time it was just the offensive coordinator, that did the the strength conditioning. And I was intrigued, and I never really had a strength coach or anything like that, even though he was a football coach, but it was better than what I had as my math teacher in high school. So, getting in with some of the training, and I took a USA weightlifting course in 2011 by Jed Smith, who's at, where's he at? He's
Northern Iowa, right?
Yeah, Northern Iowa. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I was blown away. I mean, the whole thing was like, holy cow! Like, and I came back and I tried to improve my training and everything, and I wanted, like, what should I do, as far as a degree plan, and I'm like, I want to do something that I would look up on my own time, and so like exercise science is like perfect, and so I did that, and I was really interested in learning more about strength conditioning. And so I reached out to Travis Anderson, who was a strength coach at Morehead State, which is right next to Fargo. And he got me in touch with Jim Kramer at North Dakota State. And I used to go over there and, watch for 4 to 6 hours, just standing there taking notes. And then, get the chance of 5 minutes after to talk to him, to discuss. And, they take training pretty seriously over there. So, a little, shadow person, just watching, and so from there, I just started networking, just in the different area with Nate Moe at South Dakota State, Coach Silbernagel at UMary, just the different coaches in the area that I could drive to and learn everything I could while I was in undergrad. And then, from there, I took a drive to Colorado Springs on my spring break, because I wanted to do something in Colorado, and my old track coach had a connection at the Air Force Academy. So he got me in contact with him, and then I took the trip. I drove like 14 hours, go meet this one strength coach. And, I met with him. He's like, yeah, like, do you guys do any internships? He's like, well, like, we don't advertise it or anything like that, but, but we could do one for you if that's, so I more or less secured an internship a year in advance. And then and then from there, it turned out to be an internship with their football strength coach, Coach Matt McGinnian, who's still there, by the way. One of the most genuine, charismatic people I've ever met. I honestly, from that internship experience, I learned how to really just treat people with respect. And he's just a great man of character and everything. And it wasn't more than 2 days into that I'm like, man, this is what I want to do, and there was the Air Force Academy is different than most college. You get 200 football players and only 2 lifting groups. So you have 100 football players, 3 coaches, and it's this massive weight room. And so, as an intern with virtually 0 experience, he just threw me in there, and he's like, you have to do it. You just have to start coaching, and he gave, and it was a wonderful experience, and I was hooked. And from there, I knew, while I was doing the internship, as an intern, I couldn't travel with the football team at all. And so they would travel to a game. And then I decided to go to the Olympic Training Center, which was also in Colorado Springs. And at the time, their security system wasn't very good. So you couldn't do this nowadays, but I went in and just went into the weight room, and I go into the weight room, and the strength coach there, he's like, who the heck are you? And I'm like, I'm just, I'm Philip. I'm an intern with Coach McGinnian. He's like, oh, Coach McGinnian, I love that guy, and then he started talking and everything. And I popped a question like, hey, is there a time that I could volunteer? Because the academy, they have a unique schedule. Everything's in the afternoon. So I didn't have to come to the academy until like 10. And so I'm like, hey, I could like volunteer in the morning here, So I started volunteering my time at the training center before I go out to the Air Force Academy. And once I was done with the Air Force Academy internship, they, the director there, Amanda, said, hey, if you want to apply for the real internship, apply and then email me to make sure you don't get lost in the pile. And so I went back to Valley City State and I had one more semester, and I got the internship, and then I graduated, and then I went back to Colorado Springs, did the internship at the Olympic Training Center. Again, it was a wonderful experience. Got exposed to high-level athletes, the best in the world in their respective sports. And then from there, I wanted, I definitely want to be a strength coach, but I knew I needed a master's degree, and I knew the graduate assistant was the way to go. And before I went to the training center, I drove, I think 6-7 hours to go meet Coach Mo at South Dakota State, just to get, my name, and a face to the name and everything. And then after the internship at the training center, I reached back out to him because of a GA, and then, one thing after another. And I went there, and so I got the GA there, and it was a wonderful experience. I got, coaching experience, programming experience, all those good things as a GA. And then from there, I did a short stint at South Dakota School of Mines. Both the strength coaches there had left for other jobs, so they didn't have anybody. So they more or less kind of contracted me in to train the football team. And then I did that for about a month and a half, and then I got the job at American with Coach Foster. And then I was there for 3 years. And when I was at AU at American with Sean, as you know, you've worked with Sean. He's an excellent coach, and he knows his stuff. And Olympic lifting is more or less his bread and butter. And I knew that, and I had reached out to Coach Foster 2 years prior because I watched a YouTube video, and I'm like, I want my athletes to look like that. How did you do it? I called him and everything. And then, so I knew that I really wanted to learn from him, and, getting the chance to actually go work for him was, I knew it was going to be a good experience. So slowly but surely, I went from incredibly bad technique to okay technique. And I still have lots of issues in Olympic lifting, but I did a couple of competitions, and, I'm not posting any great numbers or anything like that, but I just, Olympic lifting is difficult, and just to go through something that's difficult, will help with coaching athletes too. And so that's more or less how I got into the Olympic lifting part, was being with Sean, and more or less my coaching story too. So.
Hey, no, I like that, because usually I ask those questions separately, but oftentimes the majority of the guests end up kind of intertwining the two, like how they compete, how they train, what kind of got them started, and then as they're training or as they're coaching, they found either their strength sport or they found the side of coaching that they really enjoy. And it was kind of cool to hear how yours fit in. And I know, being from the Dakotas, you're used to driving around. I've got a few friends from the Dakotas, so hearing you say, "I'll drive 14 hours to go see this guy," I was like, that's just normal.
Yeah, I know. Which was weird, when I was at American, because there's like 6 colleges all within like 20 minutes of each other, But as a young strength coach trying to gain connections, the only way to meet coaches, you have to drive 2 to 4 or 5 hours. But you also get to drive like 80 miles per hour on interstate with no traffic. So it's not too bad. But,
yeah. Hey, yeah, that is definitely different. But I like what you said. Definitely seeing coaches in person and the amount of connections you made going through like all your different spots and all the different stops you had along the way, like that definitely has helped. I have no doubt about it. So kind of speak on now, after you left American, you're in a completely different role now. Like you're taking a step outside of the collegiate sector and now you're in the tactical setting, working as a high intensity tactical training coordinator for the Marine Corps or Marine Corps. My dad's going to kill me if he hears that. For the Marine Corps. So kind of speak on what your new position entails.
Yeah. So, so I'm a HITT coordinator, which is, as Nick says, a high intensity tactical training coordinator. And essentially what we do is to be a resource for Marines to be combat fit, combat ready. And how we go about that, there's a couple different ways. We have HITT classes that they can just come to, that, we do training. I think pre-COVID, we had bigger turnouts and everything, but I think the numbers have gone down a little bit because of COVID, but so that's one area. The other area and our main focus that we do is we have small unit leader courses, which is a week-long course, 8 hours a day, that we take Marines who are leaders in their units and train them how to be better coaches, and training the coach essentially. So that's one of our main focuses, and then we also do some group training as well, depending on different factors and those types of things. And then a variety of other things too. We do like nutrition, consulting, and a variety of other like little tiny tasks and stuff like that. We'll put on like events and stuff for the Marines and those types of things, and competitions. And we do like traditionally there's like a HITT challenge where they'll compete, and if you win, then you go to the States, and then all the HITT installations will have a champion, and they'll compete in like a the world championships of HITT, So yeah, and so it's a cool program. I would say, to understand what I do here would be kind of like what strength conditioning was maybe in like the 80s and 90s, where in the military side of things, back in collegiate strength conditioning, it was, they didn't have any strength coaches. It was the sport coaches that would do the training. And then Boyd Epley decided, hey, I can train your athletes, and then they had success, and other schools caught on like, oh my gosh, we need that too. And then it kept evolving until it is today, where almost even D3s, almost everyone has a strength coach. And so, in the military side of things, special forces is like the Power 5 schools was back in like the 80s and 90s, where they have a designated strength coach to train these specific athletes for a specific mission. And then where I am in this environment would be like back in the times when the sport coaches were training the athletes. And in that time, instead of like a sport coach who would train their athletes, here it's a Marine that trains their unit. And so it would be like what if I was in the collegiate setting, or like around the collegiate setting back in that time, basically what I do here is to say like, hey, strength conditioning is really important, and we're going to help train you to be better coaches, to be able to train everybody, and so it'd be like like a bunch of sport coaches coming with us for a week, and then learning how to squat properly and hinge and all these types of things. And then some sport coaches will think it's really important that we train their specific unit or team, and then that grows and grows and grows. So HITT really has, and there's other programs too, like FFI and everything. There's no real limit to it. When Marines will find that it's important, the more it will grow and grow. And I think it'll grow just like it did in college, where it's just a snowball. Like first it was the big schools, and then it was the semi-big schools, and then now it's pretty much everyone. And I would predict in probably in 10, 20 years from now that there will be probably a strength coach in every aspect of the military too. Because I think what's happening right now is with like the special forces side of things is that, hey, this is a good idea. And then I think that'll trickle down with everything else. So what we do is we're trying to bridge the gap of strength conditioning and Marines, and we're trying to create an environment as much as we can to help them with the resources that we have. So it is different. The environment is different because it's not like college where it's like the athletes are mandated to train with you. You have them for 4 to 5 years. Where here, it's like they might come and then they're gone, So and it could be unrelated to, it's not even them not wanting to come. Their job might have them, deployed, or they might be doing some exercise or some other thing, or they get, to another camp or whatever. And so it can be random a little bit with the training, and it's not as, structured as like the college setting is.
Right. Yeah, that's one big difference that I've heard multiple people say, like your structure of how long you have access to that athlete or military personnel is completely different from the collegiate setting. And they could get deployed, they could be reassigned. And I like what you guys are doing because you're kind of making it self-sufficient. You're creating more leaders so that they can kind of take on the reins and some of the burden of it. So you're not just teaching them how to train, you're teaching them a lot more. And there's a big holistic approach. There's competition, there's nutrition, there's education. There's a lot of things that kind of encompass what you do, so that if you only have them for that week-long course, or you have them for a 2-year deployment, whatever it ends up being, it's kind of in their hands whether or not they use it to the full benefit. And you hope that you can provide them enough that they continue to use that in their training going forward.
Yep. Yeah. And any Marine that I get, whether it's in our small unit leader course or they're coming to our classes or my goal as a coach is that when they train with me and they leave, they're better lifters. They're better at training, because I don't want to, I'm not a coach that's just like, here's the workout, go, work hard. I want them to actually improve. I want their squat to get better. I want them to be able to hinge properly. So wherever else they go, that, they'll be more efficient in their training and be better, so.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, so we touched on it a little bit. I know you had, it's a little bit different. You had prior experience working at the Air Force Academy. So you did have a little military kind of workup towards being actually involved on the tactical side. What are some of the additional differences between like traditional sports performance and military preparedness training from a programming standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, or just from a quote unquote athlete training standpoint?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we touched on this a little bit. One of the challenges of the military is that it's very vague of what is the, goal of training. And so it really depends. Like, is this a desk worker, who is doing cybersecurity, or is this someone who is infantry? And I think, there's lots of different, tasks in the military, and it's, is the need of tactical training really doing a bunch of circuits, or is it doing mobility, shoulder mobility, because Marines do a ton of pull-ups and they sit in desk all day, or is it being able to, so there's a lots of different areas of what is the need necessarily for training for this particular tactical environment. And so it is certainly a difficult task. They have their combat fitness tests and they have their PT, but you don't really necessarily want to train just for that necessarily. You want to have a holistic approach to it, and that's HITT is trying to accomplish that, where we're working on speed, we're working on strength and power, and then of course we're incorporating those things of the tests as well. In my opinion, what is combat ready? For me, a combat ready is someone who's not hurt, and then someone who is most likely not to get hurt during combat or their deployment duties and so on and so forth. And what I mean by that, there's nothing you can do about, getting shot at or something like that. That's not the point. The point is that you're not accidentally, twisting your ankle or you're pulling hamstring because you haven't, so soft tissue injuries can be, totally avoidable if with proper training. And so, but the training shouldn't be so extreme that you get hurt from the training, I mean, there shouldn't be that, and that's part of the problem with the military traditionally, is that a lot of Marines will get hurt from training and, excessive running, excessive whatever. And so, to me, it's like, all right, what kind of training can we do that is going to make us, our energies system more efficient, and then relative strength that is going to help us, because, as far as like, you want to be injury resistant, and to be injury resistant, you have to be in really good shape, and you have to be relatively strong. And when I mean relatively strong, just being strong, your body weight, and so, as far as so for me, when I'm thinking of that, is the Marine, if they're like really, if their mobility stinks, is it, doing extra mobility for them might be a good idea, because, that could hinder them. They could maybe potentially get hurt from that. If they're super weak and then all they do is run, working on some strength training can help them. Or, if all they do is do bodybuilding, but they never run, and then they're all of a sudden asked to run, now they have shin splints, So it's, you want to be certainly you want to have a holistic approach to it, because you don't really know what's going to be the demand, So it is an interesting challenge, because again, you just kind of have to be ready at any moment. And so for me, it's doing training that isn't going to hurt somebody, and then, a holistic approach that you're generally prepared for the task at hand. So
No, that's a great way to put it. And I know you could take a lot of elements and programming philosophies from your collegiate setting. It's like you said, it's such a broad spectrum of what the tactical athlete you have is actually, what the demand of their job in MOS is. And that completely changes everything, because I mean, the majority of collegiate sports, you're thinking like, is it a court sport? Is it an aquatic sport? Is it a field sport? It's a sport, but it's kind of like training, like esports nowadays. Like that's completely different. If you have someone that is in cyber warfare and they're just basically behind a desk for hours on end, that is a completely different way of training them. And that needs to be addressed so that they can actually do their job properly. And like, people can laugh at it all they want, but like, there are injuries and there's stress involved with sitting at a desk, and there are chronic things that happen from that. And a lot of that can be alleviated from proper training. Go ahead.
Oh, and then, another thing with, actually, HITT just did an article with me and our health education educator on mental health and how exercise can, enhance that. And, because that's another side of things too. Because like, if all you're doing is sitting on a TV screen, and then, you're told to social distance because of COVID, that's probably not going to be the greatest deal for a guy, right? And so, just exercising in general is good. It's good for mental health too, and so, for a variety of reasons. But yeah.
No, definitely.
And as far as like, are you going to do like linear with them? Are you going to do conjugate? Are you going to do like step loading? Are you going to do, it's really difficult to say, because I would say it depends, because if you have someone who's completely new to everything, then it would have to be some type of linear deal, because you're focused on just more or less technique at that point. But if you have someone that's been training for a while, but it's, again, the environment of the military is you're in and you're out, in and you're out. I would say that a linear wouldn't work, because you could go for a bit, then they're gone, and then they come back, and then what do you start over, So, I think like an RPE could make a lot of sense, where, whenever you can train, you're training to a point that is not too difficult, but difficult enough that you're getting a good enough training stimulus from it. And I think that can kind of jumpstart it, where I think like the traditional, like if you get like a freshman, let's say, if you have like your wrestlers, you get a freshman wrestler, you don't take them right to where they could lift. You probably spend a month or two on technique and those types of things, and you're, really light weights, and then you're building up. But sometimes military, you don't have that. You don't have that luxury to have, I know I have 3 weeks with this guy, and so, as long as the technique is as good as you can, you're going to coach it as hard as you can. But at the same time, they need to get to that level a little bit quicker, just because it's in and out of the time. And I think also with RP, because they'd be nice, is if they are really fatigued from their job, then that should, if they do it properly, they wouldn't lift as heavy. And then if they are feeling really good, then you can start lifting a little bit heavier. And a linear program isn't going to do that. If you do, like, let's say, even if you do like Texas method or something like that, where you always have to go up, 5 pounds, or if you do 5-3-1 and you're going up 5 pounds, it seems like once a month or something like that, it's like, it's too slow. And just because you don't have the luxury to train consistently every single day, for a long period of time, because you're in and out all the time. And so I think that could be a solution to it, just because of the movement part of it. But certainly, yeah, it's a challenge. So
No, I would agree with you. Like we talked about the different jobs and the different duties that they have, and the uncertainty of how long you're actually going to have access to them. Or again, like we mentioned in the very beginning, they're not mandated to come to you.
Mm-mm.
So like
Yeah.
you also have to have some compliancy with that, and they have to come in, they have to be consistent with it. So teaching them how to use RPEs is probably a great approach, because now that, like you said, they can take their stressors and their fatigue levels into concern. If they, for whatever reason, train 3 days a week for like 3 weeks, and then only
Right.
come in once after that, like at least they can start to tailor that based off their fatigue levels and their readiness. That's a great way to do it. The other thing I started to see, because like every time I go home and like I train on base, I see all the Marines training, I see all the sailors and Navy training, and there's a lot of excessive running. There's a lot of excessive what they like to do.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I wondered, how do you approach that stuff? Because at the end of the day, they're not necessarily doing what, like, training for the demands of their job,
Yeah.
or what they kind of need. They're doing what makes them feel good. So is there a balance with how you kind of approach that? Because you want them to, like you said, with the mental health side, you want them
Mhm.
to appreciate exercise and training, but at the same time, you want to reduce those risks of injuries. You want to keep them combat ready, combat fit. But if they enjoy something, like, how do you balance that?
Well, I think it really depends on the task of the unit, or or of the Marine, or soldier, if you're Army or whatever. If you're the cyber security guy and you love powerlifting, I think you should just do powerlifting. And then when it becomes like, you got to do your PT, you should run a little bit right before PT, just so you can get a good score. Then you go back. I think that's totally fine. I think where like getting really specific as far as like being, like we really need to be holistic here, is more of these like special forces side of things, where, hey, like we have a general idea of what you're going to be demanding of, those guys are like, jumping out in airplanes and, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're doing, they'll have to do whatever, and so, and in that setting, that, that strength coaches, they're probably not going to have the the specific details, because it's probably something they don't really need to know, but they probably would know what kind of demand that unit might need in a certain amount of time. So you can be a lot more specific with that. But you're like, hey, like our mission is going to require quite a bit of cardio, so we're going to need to be able to do this, so on and so forth. And so I think in that environment, I think you could really push. And in that environment too, they actually, they have full-time strength coaches that, again, specifically just for these people. And again, like what I said, like that's how, like, college strength conditioning was back in like the 80s and 70s, where just the big time, the big time schools got the strength coach. And in the military side, it's just the big time special forces get the full-time strength coach, And so if you're not that, I think doing what you enjoy, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I see there's two types of Marines I really see. There's ones that runs a lot, like you mentioned. There's the bodybuilders, and there's some power lifters in there too and stuff like that. Then there's some like CrossFitters that try to do Olympic lifting or whatever. I think but even if you are just a bodybuilder guy, I think it is really important to still have the conditioning aspect of it as well, and so on and so forth. So I think it really just depends. Like if what they're doing is going to require like a cardiovascular aspect of it, or because the PFT and the CFT, it doesn't, it matters to them because that score, it goes on their record, and that matters for ranking up and all those types of things. So they should have a holistic approach and to that. And the Army is actually doing a pretty good job with that, with their new combat fitness test, where it's not just push-ups and running a lot. It's it's deadlifts and pulling strength, which the Marines have already been doing for a long time, and so on and so forth. So it's prioritizing strength too, not just the cardio part of it. So yeah.
No, that's great to kind of touch on all those things, and yeah, you see a little bit of those, and I think it's fine to kind of add that in. And like you said, just if you've got a PFT coming up or your CFT coming up, then make sure that you're starting to tailor stuff back towards that. I mean, those only come few and far between when you actually, and when you have to get ready for those. So
yeah,
if you're not running, you better start running then.
Yeah. And the people who are, like doing the bodybuilding or whatever, like these people are, they're training, and then if they want to do a better run, they know how to train. And it's not a big deal for them if they're going to train a little bit of running or whatever, or if you're a runner, they might not try to like learn how to squat necessarily, but they'll try to get their pull-ups up and stuff like that or whatever, if you're a Marine.
Right.
And so, the challenge becomes the people who aren't quite into it, what do you do with them? So there's programs for that too. The BCP program, where you get in trouble because you've gotten too big, and then you get mandated on this program, and that training is a little bit different because you're losing weight and stuff. But
oh yeah, voluntary mandatory.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
that sounds fun. Hey, so with your competitive background, and like you talked about, like going to join like Coach Foster at American, and now starting to be pretty heavily involved in Olympic weightlifting, like a lot of those movements and your familiarity with them has influenced and kind of driven your decision to incorporate those principles into your collegiate like setting with your athletes. How does that thought process kind of change with the military population? We talked about like some of the restrictions you have with them, but do you guys teach courses on that? Do you incorporate like some of the things that you enjoy, like weightlifting, into the HITT system training, or is that kind of just pushed off just because of the amount of time it takes to work that barbell?
Yeah. So when I first got here, I'm like, what's Olympic lift right away, and it's not that hard to coach, but not everyone has, worked with a Sean Foster for 3 years, and so it's not necessarily realistic, to expect every, coach to be, proficient in Olympic lifting, and and to push that out on a large scale. And so, but I've done a couple of group unit training, and where I came in, and I'm going to do a power position clean, so on and so forth, and it was fine. But I haven't seen him for months now. And what did we get out of that? And so and that again maybe a little plyometrics maybe would have been better for some power development. I created a weightlifting clinic, and what I'm planning on doing, and that's actually tomorrow, my first one, and I open that up for Marines to take, and so it's a 4-hour clinic, learning the snatch and the clean and jerk. And then as far as Olympic lifting goes, I feel pretty comfortable. They've gone through that 4-hour clinic, that if they're coming to my classes and those, I can tailor the workout to incorporate some of those movements for them, because I think Olympic lifting is highly beneficial, and so that's one aspect. I'm trying to push where having a course that really breaks down everything and really helps. Again, my goal, or HITT's goal, is that Marines are combat fit and ready. And my goal as a coach is that anyone I'm coming in contact, they become better lifters. And so if I can get in front of them for 4 hours and teach them how to do this Olympic lifting, whether they're training with me or training with anyone else or on their own, again, they're better at it. And Olympic lifting has so many benefits. I think can really help. So that's what I've been.
That's a great way to put it. I think that's cool, and hopefully you get a good turnout for the course tomorrow. Then.
Yeah, I mean, it actually it got to max capacity before even marketing could put it out. So
there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited about it. It should be good. I'm hoping to have more in the future, and then again, trying to spread out the sport of weightlifting too, but also that the positive aspects of it, and again, helping Marines be better lifters. So
I think that's a good approach to do it too, because like we've talked about, and you said, like, you got 3 years with Sean, you've had multiple years with other coaches, and you've trained and competed yourself. I mean, I know you got a setup in the living room too. So like it takes a lot of work to refine those 3 movements. It's only 3 movements like that that are actually in the Olympics. And
yeah,
I tell my athletes, like, when they get real frustrated with that, I was like, people spend 20 plus years of their life doing this only. So don't be discouraged if you like don't get it, like it doesn't click right away. So having a course where you can kind of focus just solely on that, I think you're going to see a lot more. You're going to see a great turnout, but you're also going to see a lot more people interested and get better feedback because they can actually spend the time on it. So
what I really like about Olympic lifting is that you can never be good enough. There's always something you can be better at, and always trying to strive to be better is, I think, can be, because again, like a burpee, you're not striving for 20 years at how to get a good burpee, right? But like Olympic lifting, there's always something that you can do better with it, and that's why I like coaching about it, because there's always something I can find wrong, and then help improve, or to point out something that they did right, so on and so forth. And so, and just the idea of trying to improve yourself, that goes into all aspects of life. If one thing I've learned from just training under the bar, would be that, consistency, always trying to improve, and just doing the basics over and over and over again. It applies to, spending time with God and in the Word and the Bible. It's the same with finances. A lot of these things are like really simple, but if you're doing the basics every single day, and trying to improve a little bit better. And there's actually a quote from, I'm sure you heard it. You're in the wrestling kind of in the Dan Gable, and the old wrestling coach from Iowa. And he said, if something's important, do it every day. If it's not, don't do it. Don't do it at all. And just doing the basics, every single day and trying to improve, and training with the barbell helps that. It helps create discipline and those types of things. So
Definitely. Yeah, that consistency and the discipline that stuff creates. I've heard those quotes a bunch. Our wrestling coaches wrestled for Dan Gable, so those are thrown around all the time.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh yeah.
Hey, so you touched on it a little bit too, with like getting into a little bit into your training and like how it's kind of benefited you. So your own experience training and competing, like how has that actually benefited, or you think has benefited your coaching? And why do you feel it's important for you to continue to train?
Well, it's evolved over time. When I first got into it, I listened to a lot of like Mike Boyle, and I was like, functional, everything's single leg, you only run on one leg at a time anyways, why are you squatting on two legs? And it makes no sense, and I was gun ho on that. And I was like, every fancy little circus trick you could think of, I had not thought of it, but someone else had thought of it. I just stole it from other people, and then it wasn't until I got to the University of Mary with Coach Silbernagle, and he really, we really butted heads, and I was pretty arrogant, and I didn't really know anything, but I thought I did, and he really humbled me, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me from there. And and it wasn't until I got to South Dakota State that I finally just stopped doing so many random things. And I just did starting strength, rip a toe, straight from the website. And I did that, for like, 3 months. And then I got strong. How about that? Actually, slow down, did the same thing over and over and over again, and I got better at it. And back then, doing like 120 kilo deadlift was like so heavy, so heavy. And and it's my thought process of what was heavy and what training, was so wasn't, so training has helped me realize that these weights aren't heavy, so on and so forth. And if you do back squat, your back's not gonna hurt, so some of the, I realized that some people are trying to sell stuff like Mike Boyle, and there's other people, there's other influencers out there too, so I used to be so like, this is how you do it, this is everything. And now, take in information and you weed out some of the things that, are, more or less just trying to, people are trying to sell themselves on a certain idea or something like that, which isn't necessarily bad, but you kind of have to know, for your situation, what is good and what's not. And training for myself has really helped me with that, because getting stronger, doing squats, doing deadlifts, doing these things, really helped me appreciate the training aspect of things. And also it gave me a lot more confidence, not only in myself, but also, coaching athletes, because, I used to do like rear foot elbow split squats with like 200 pounds, like 250 pounds or something like that, and but that didn't give me any more confidence than, squatting like 400 pounds. For me, that was a big deal. And that, like, and and a lot of strength coaches, that's nothing, but it builds confidence, lifting builds confidence, and not only confidence myself, but in, training athletes. So, yeah.
No, that's great, because I think both, like you said, confidence in both aspects of it, like from your own personal training, but then I think it helps you feel confident in how you program for your athletes, knowing that you've done it, you've kind of been the first test subject, and you feel a certain type of way after accomplishing it, though, and these benefits are going to do the same for your athletes. And that's a great confidence to have, not just throwing stuff at a wall and hoping it sticks and not knowing what's going to come from that stimulus at all. That's a great thing. And I know that athletes and your Marines see that confidence. And when you exude that confidence and you're bought into the program that you're giving them, then they definitely feel more comfortable to put everything they have into it. And that's already in itself like worth the training.
Right. Yeah. Because, as a young coach, I couldn't see what I see now, and now that I've gone through that process, and you go to a Marine and they're scared to do a back squat, or something like that, or Olympic lifting or whatever, for myself going through that process, it's a lot easier for me to not necessarily convince them, to do that, but to, like, I have confidence in you that you can do it too, and then going through that whole process of, training and everything. So,
No, that's definitely cool. Hey, so I wanted to put these two kind of together and kind of thinking about advice for someone that's considering dipping their toe into tactical training, or maybe even working at a service academy or something along those lines. But also for you, since you kind of are isolated, this is your first, outside of Air Force football, like this is your first tactical training gig. So what kind of resources are you using to kind of bridge the gap and learn more about the tactical side? Is it just honestly talking with your Marines, coaches with more experience? And then what kind of advice do you have for someone either trying to research more about it or actually get involved in tactical coaching?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the tactical side of things, the training really isn't that much different. Like, as far, a squat's a squat. RDLs, deadlifts, it doesn't really matter if you're a Marine or if you're a swimmer, right? But like, what I don't know much about and what I've been learning out here is the lingo, the culture, how things work in the military, and obviously that's much, much different. And then my boss has been working with military for over 10 years, so he's really helped. And his dad was a Marine and all those types of things. And even just like learning like lingo, how Marines talk, and like the acronyms. There's so many acronyms, and that can really, because if you sound like a Marine, or if you sound like you talk that language, that's going to help so much to convince someone to do a squat. And because they're very they're very close-knit community. And when you can, it's the same thing with like wrestling. Wrestling is a very small community, and if you can talk a little bit of wrestling, they'll love you right away.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's true with anything. If you're a football guy and you can talk football, it's going to help you if you're going to have a football strength position. So, but
yeah, it's just different with it being such a small community. And I know growing up as a military brat, like living on Marine Corps bases all the time, like you kind of get that closeness, that feeling of like continued support. And like you said, the lingo and the culture and all the acronyms and everything, like you subconsciously start speaking that way. And then when you go off base, like no one has any idea what you're doing. Like they don't know what you're talking about. But like within that small community, the same with wrestling and some of those smaller sports, that kind of Olympic based sports that are just honestly like less popular.
Mm-hmm.
Those ones just seem to be more tightly knit because they know their numbers are either small or fleeting. So it definitely is a different, and you feel different when you're included and you're part of that community. I know for sure. That's awesome though.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as how to get involved, like it's a little harder, because if you want to get involved in college, there's so many internships. You do a free internship, and you can start getting involved. Some internships are harder to get than others, but generally people don't mind you working for free for them, So, and if you and we've all done it and everything, but military, you can't just be like, all right, I'm just going to hop on this base, and start, it's so, if you've already have experience, like in the collegiate setting or something like that, and you're looking to get into it, KBR has, if like special forces, like KBR has a contract with special forces. So I don't know if it gets posted on the Indeed jobs. I'm not really sure, but all their posting is on their website. So as far as like that side of things go, the Army is, I've been told, and they're pushing to create a lot of jobs in for strength coaches in the Army, depending on proposals and contracts and those types of things. But usajobs.com, that's another area that you can apply for jobs and those types of things. So I mean, unlike college, you can kind of intern and kind of get yourself in the system, where the military side, you more or less you need to get a job, and you go through the normal process of those things. But I think with the military side of, it's a really, no one trained military until about 2010, 2012. And when special forces finally, they got a contract. I forget the company, but it's a different company now. It's KBR now, but, and it's just, I think it's just getting started. I think it's going to grow, and it's going to be pretty big. And I think it's going to help collegiate strength conditioning, I think, too, making it more competitive and all those types of things too. But yeah, so.
No, that's great. I know those jobs opening up is only a good thing. And honestly, they should be like all the military personnel should be the first people that have strength coaches accessible to them. And I know special forces usually drive those change. So hopefully more contracts like that kind of get fulfilled. But I know, like you said, big Army is trying to fulfill a ton of them coming forward. And I mean, out on the West Coast, there's a ton of Air Force ones like popping up as well. So hopefully that just means more creative jobs for military going forward, and it's accessible to more coaches, and that becomes a venture for more people. So that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I think almost not identical, but very similar to how collegiate strength conditioning came about. Again, I think the military is about where collegiate strength conditioning was in the 80s and 90s, and I think it's going to evolve until the normal desk worker in the Navy will be going to strength conditioning training during their workday. I think eventually we'll probably get to that point, because I think what they're experiencing with special forces is there's like, oh my gosh, our injury rates are way down, and we spend so much money on these guys, and this is a good investment, and I think that's going to trickle down, and it's going to continue to grow, because they're seeing that like having professional strength conditioning coaches can really help reduce the injury rates, and that the medical costs with that and everything, like it's a huge saving on the military branches. And I think that will be the driving force for the military. I think injury reduction or injury prevention will be more or less the key to expanding strength conditioning jobs in the military.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That medical costs for injuries, that's a huge concern, and having more professionals on the front lines to actually mitigate some of those risks and actually appropriately program things is going to definitely be the driving force behind it. And hopefully it doesn't take quite so long as collegiate has taken to kind of like wrap its head around, but we kind of know the government, so sometimes it takes a little bit longer for the wheels to start kicking in.
Yeah, the red tape takes a bit. So
I know, that's for sure. Hey, so like any good training session, we close it off with a good finisher. So we got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and since I know you've been blowing out some as many reps as possible, or some tens for whatever reason,
Oh,
um, we might have some overtime at the end for you.
okay.
Hey, so you can answer these as quickly as you want, or you can take your time on them. But you ready?
Let's do it. Let's play.
All right. So, biggest influence in strength and conditioning and biggest influence in weightlifting.
Uh, so does it have to be one person or
No,
like?
they can be two separate
Oh,
ones. Unless
great.
you
Okay.
unless you got one that's lumped together, go for it.
No, no, no. I think for strength and conditioning, there's been two main influencers, and that'd be Sean Foster and then Coach Mo at South Dakota State. And those two coaches, like Coach Mo, he like he has your back and everything. He will do everything in his power to try to get you a job, to help you. That he is an advocate for the strength conditioning field profession. I think he's still on the CSCCA board and everything. And he he gave me the opportunity to be a GA, which basically gives you the end to be able to be in the profession. And of course, and then Sean Foster last 3 years have been just a huge influence on me as far as really the coaching details and the intensity that you bring to a coaching session is you can't read it in a book. And then like being with him every single day, really it rubs on a guy. And before you know it, I'm coaching intense, too, and I'm a fairly, I fairly, an intense guy when it comes to coaching, but Sean brings it to another level. So yeah. And then the other one was, what was the other one?
Influence in weightlifting.
In weightlifting. Okay. I think Cal Strength. I think even like Donnie Schenkel, like on YouTube, like that's a huge influence on Olympic lifting as the sport for at least the United States. Because I mean, we all know the United States is behind on the world stage, but like Wes Kitts, with and Cal Strength, and Greg Ebert. He's another I think big influence in at least USA weightlifting. And like influence, what I mean, like there's been a lot of successful coaches in Olympic lifting, but what that brings it to, like the social media, I think Cal Strength has done one of the better jobs for promoting the sport. And so just they have a huge media presence and everything. So I would say Cal Strength for that.
Old school Cal Strength is where it was at.
Oh yeah,
I love those.
for
All right.
sure.
Hey, so what can you be found doing when you're not coaching or competing? What are some of your hobbies now that you're a little bit relocated on your new island?
Well, I don't know if this is a hobby necessarily, but I like reading the Bible every morning and praying. And I think for me that's really important. And I dig into a lot of finance. I'm actually just finishing up my master's in finance. I have 2 classes to go, and I'm purely doing it just for enjoyment. So it's one of the other aspects of that I like to do. And there's a lot of parallels to training in strength conditioning and as in finance as well. And I don't know, because I just like improving things. And financial literacy, I don't know, just something else that I've really have enjoyed. And then of course I like taking my wife on long walks on the beach here in Okinawa, and walked with our dogs and stuff. So yep, that's
There you
that
go.
about takes up our time, going on walks with my wife and our dogs and lifting.
There you go.
So
Those are all good
yep.
hobbies.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, so if you weren't coaching, like in strength conditioning, what would you be doing? And if you had to pick a different sport other than weightlifting, what sport would you pick?
Well, we'll start with if it wasn't weightlifting, what sport would it be? I would say there's two sports. The one that's related to weightlifting would be powerlifting. I don't really like bench press, but that would be another sport. If I could pick any sport to be involved in, I table tennis, ping pong. It's one of my favorite sports to do. And I know it's silly, but I really enjoy that. What was the other part?
If you weren't coaching, I guess you're
Oh,
dabbling
yeah.
in financing, but I
Sure.
don't know if that's the
Yeah,
career.
no, sure. There's been two routes I wouldn't mind going on. One would be a missionary, um, going to different parts of the world and spreading the gospel of Jesus. And then the other one would be a financial advisor. To me, being a financial advisor is very similar to being a coach, a strength coach. Basically, you're coaching people to be better at at that, really being better at the basics, understanding what a Roth IRA is and 401k, what does that even mean, and so very basic things and like strength conditioning, it's learning how to squat and how to hinge, and so I probably would be like some type of financial advisor or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
just coaching different mediums. That's all it is, I guess.
sure. Yeah, I like helping people, so strength conditioning, I get to help people, and if in finance, I get to help people, and if I'm spreading the gospel to people, I'm certainly helping people. So that's what I like to do.
There you go. All right, so we set up an ideal training day for you. What's your go-to music selection or PR song, and what's your go-to post-training meal?
Well, I tell you what, my go-to band is Demon Hunter. So I'm big into Christian rock, and that's a whole subculture in itself. But like my go-to band is Demon Hunter, just for like a normal workout. But I might warm up with Skillet, so it's a little bit less intense. But then I'll hang the Demon Hunter when it gets a little bit more intense. And if it's really intense, I go to Haste the Day, which is like a really heavy metal band, Christian metal band. And I don't even know what they're saying, but it's really hard metal. So, you can lift heavy. And I would say those are, that would be my go-to, music for lifting. So, yeah.
What are you eating after that training day then? What's the go-to meal?
What's the go-to? Ideally, or what I like normally do?
Let's say it's a PR day and you're ready to blow it out of the water.
Blow it out of the water. Probably would, you'll get a protein shake, grill up some steaks, have some mashed potatoes, and have a good steak.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah. If it was if it's just like a normal, I would just have a peanut butter and jelly with milk. But yeah, but if it if it was a big a big time lift or something, I might treat myself to something like that. So
there you go, treat yourself. All right, last one I got for you. Most valuable piece of advice you've received, and then if you feel like it, sharing who it was from.
My wife. So this isn't like too deep or anything, but his name escapes my mind, but the strength coach for the Bulls back in Jordan's day.
Oh, now you're blanking me too, though.
Yeah. Anyways, I feel bad for not remembering his name, but I met him at a strength coach conference, and I had a big goatee, and he's like, and we talked for an hour. He talked about all kinds of different stuff, great stuff. I took a bunch of notes, and Al Vermeil. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and I talked for him like an hour, and then I had this big goatee, and he's like, you know what? He's like, and my last advice for you is you shave that beard and look like a strength coach. I don't like this trend of, these coaches having these big beards and stuff. We got to be professionals. We got to look like professionals, so shave that off. So I did, and I haven't grown it back since. So I guess, that wasn't like super deep advice or anything, but it was a legend in the profession. And he's right. Maybe not necessarily, you can have a beard and whatever, but being a professional and looking like a strength coach, I think, does have its role. So
no, that's still great advice, but that's hilarious to hear it from him. And I mean, take it for what it is. That's still great advice. Be a professional is a good thing to do. Hey, yeah. So again, how can people follow you? I know the time zone is crazy. So what's the best way to kind of reach out to you and kind of talk training or follow what you got going on lifting in the living room?
Yeah. I think the easiest way is just to go on my Instagram. It's Coach Phil Reuer, Reuer. You can spell it frontwards and backwards. And that's probably the easiest way because, you can just send me a message on there. It's pretty easy. My email is the same, but at Gmail. So the Instagram and my email is the same, Coach Phil Reuer. Either way would be fine to get a hold of me. And I love talking training and anything like that. And since I'm way over here, I like posting a lot of my training because, I'm so far away. So it's a good way to stay connected with people. So
definitely. I feel the same way. I'm not as far away, but it's nice to post it for my training partners for whatever reason. But
yeah. And, when I was at AU, I would typically just post of my athletes, but I don't really have many athletes to post, over here. So
yeah, a little bit different now.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I'm glad we got to work this out and we figured out the time zones without a hitch. So that we did good on our part, but it was great catching up with you. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing everything you got going on with our guests today, man.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate the invite, and I was super excited. I've always wanted to do a podcast, but no one's ever asked me. So this was a cool opportunity. So thank you for this. So
hey, well, I'm glad we're your first one. So hopefully there's many more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right, Philip, take care, man.
All right. Yep. Bye.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors, Cerberus Strength. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.